A continuación, damos paso a la conferencia magistral de apertura denominada Estado del acceso a la vivienda en Bolivia, a cargo de David Smith, fundador de Affordable Housing Institute, docente de Harvard Graduate School. David nos acompaña de manera virtual y participa en vivo desde Boston, Estados Unidos.
Hi, I'm David Smith. I'm the Chief Executive Officer of the Affordable Housing Institute. We are a small, global, nonprofit consultancy that works around the world. We've worked in more than 60 countries, including half a dozen in Latin America, on solutions-oriented, evidence-based programs and policies and recommendations that can help countries make their affordable housing better. We were asked by the Cámara Boliviana of Real Estate Developers, in collaboration with the Universidad Privada de Santa Cruz, to look into the challenge of the Bolivian ecosystem, to make some findings or some tentative findings, and to make some recommendations. It took us 4 months. We had many interviews with many stakeholders, and I should compliment and thank everybody involved in this process. Our approach is to bring things in and to add an overall description of the ecosystem. And people, public, private, for-profit, nonprofit, were very forthcoming. We take things into an ecosystem because you operate in an ecosystem that has two value chains, one on the supply side and one on the demand side. On the supply side, it turns land or derelict buildings into homes that people want to live in and own. And on the demand side, it enables people who have a certain amount of money to pay on a regular basis to rent or buy those homes. And we map the journey that a piece of property takes on its way to becoming a home and that a household takes on their way to becoming a homeowner. And we do this because housing is infrastructure. It is the essential glue of cities. I'll talk more about this in a minute. But if you cannot make your housing ecosystem work, it is almost impossible to make your society work. We took on this assignment because Bolivia right now, as you know way better than I, is facing important social and economic challenges. And the housing deficit is growing. So you must act together as a country in pursuit of better housing. We're not political. What we're going to offer as advice is independent of political affiliation. And I should say, and this is a hard part, much of what I will suggest you do is difficult. If it were easy, you would have done it by now. It's not necessary to do everything the way we say or to do everything at once. Think about the things that you can do, implement, and become foundations for better change. This is going to mean change at the national policy level, and it's going to mean a redefined relationship between government and the private sector. We are willing to keep working with you folks on making changes that will contribute to better housing policies for the country. Housing is very complex to deliver, and yet it is fundamental to successful society. It exists within the larger national and local context, which means that you cannot solve the problem of housing unless there is economic stability and a baseline of economic growth, and importantly, stable medium and long-term interest rates. They can be high or they can be low, but they need to be stable. Those conditions aren't present right now in Bolivia, but our analysis is based on the idea that they will be present at some point in the near future. In the meantime, housing affordability is getting worse because of the instability we've talked about, economic and financial. And this is particularly impacting middle and lower income households and informal households. Now, as you know, 80% or more of the population is informally employed, and they use self-building or money lenders to improve their homes on their own, in many ways disconnected from the formal political system. Because of that, and because of the economic uncertainty, housing affordability in Bolivia is getting worse. Affordable housing right now is left to the market to create, and the market will create affordable housing. It will be called informal housing, or it'll be called a bidonville in Morocco, or a favela in Brazil, or a barrio in the United States, or a slum in India. People will make their own housing, and when they make it, they will make it where they can and how they can. That's rational. It has bad side effects. The formal housing system, as delivered, the formal government housing system, as delivered by Bolivia, has two main modalities: the social housing credit, which is limited, is not economically sustainable, and is captured mostly by middle and upper income households, and the social housing programs such as Vivienda for vulnerable populations. They're good ideas, but they're very limited. And most of them are focused on the formal side, whereas 4 out of 5 Bolivian households are informal. Rapid urbanization has contributed to this informality. It has contributed to unregulated housing, unregulated land uses, overload of the infrastructure. Urban sprawl is increasing the qualitative deficit and making the cities of Bolivia harder to live in. This hurts everyone. Favelas or barrios are not simply a problem for poor people, they're a problem for all Bolivians. Bolivia has laws and programs to regularize land, but they are not moving as fast as they need to address the urbanization and the qualitative backlog. The online registry system, Derecho Reales, is a fine idea, but it's not ready to operate. And because it's only partially operable, it unfortunately opens the system up to exploitation and favoritism and patronage. And then finally, given these challenges, the existing financial sector law that you have is not operating efficiently or effectively or the way that anyone would like it to operate. And this is having an impact on housing affordability or housing unaffordability and housing informality. In light of this discouraging situation, what do we recommend? The first thing that we recommend is that everyone at this conference, everyone in the real estate sector, everyone in the government sector needs to appreciate that housing is a national priority and that it will take a combination of actors across all of those dimensions that I talked about to solve it. No one group will solve it alone. That's been proven by 50 years of experience in 60 countries around the world. Bolivians with different levels of expertise and different areas of expertise have to work together or nothing good will happen. Secondly, it's in the interest of everyone in Bolivia to have a strong housing sector, because housing and affordable housing, they're not social welfare. Housing is investment in two things: human infrastructure and families in the future, and urban infrastructure and the sustainability of your cities. Housing is where jobs go to sleep at night. Housing is where the next generation of Bolivians learn about the world and grow up with aspirations and have the opportunity to be educated or not, or to be healthy or not. Investing in housing at any level grows the economy at that level, and investing in housing at any level strengthens civil society at that level. And if you want a society that is civil and is equitable and is engaged from the top to the bottom, you must be investing in housing at the top, at the middle, and at the bottom. Third thing, housing formalization isn't just urban rationalization. It is a pathway to move informal households and informal workers into the formal system. It is a pathway to increase national GDP. That needs to be done by judicially enforceable and transparent slum upgrading programs. India has been doing this for 40 years. India is a big country. They have a lot of slums. They've had a lot of practice. Brazil has, over the last 20 years, had several intervals where it had very effective pro-poor land rationalization and favela upgrading programs. Thailand has been a regional and global leader with a program called Ban Makong. And South Africa, in the post-apartheid democratic era, starting as early as the late 1990s, has had a variety of programs to bring formerly black townships and informal settlements into the land cadastre. It can be done, it should be done. That means in developing innovative initiatives to address the problem of access to financing for informal workers. Informal workers are people who do not have a credit record, a digital credit record. They are people who do not necessarily receive a payslip. They may be home-based workers or self-employed workers. But they are workers nonetheless, and they have income. And that income is regular. And that in economic terms is at effective demand. And that effective demand will be mobilized into improving the house. And more of it will go into improving the house if there are financial products that can adapt to that. The private sector innovates them. They're called money lenders. The emerging world has been innovating them for years, called microfinance. And beyond microfinance, there is housing microfinance. And all of those things move up the ladder. But then there's another stage for informal workers who want longer-term loans than microfinance can provide. Often in that situation, someone else comes in, an employer or a government agency, to strengthen the credit worthiness of those informal households. Government guarantees or partial guarantees or credit enhancement can be used to enable the aspirational informal workers to access longer-term financing at a stable payment rate. And stability of payment matters so much. Morocco is a good example on both the supply side and the demand side. For 18 years, Morocco has run a slum redevelopment program called Ville sans bidonville, cities without slums, on the supply side. And on the demand side, it has a program called FOGARIM, the Fondation Guarantee for Informal Workers. Both of those are targeted very specifically at giving the informal worker, let's call it training wheels on the bicycle, so that they can take out a credit, use it to improve a home, the home that they live in, pay it back. Alongside the housing finance products to strengthen the ability of informal workers to achieve, you want to streamline and improve the process of formalizing informal housing through home upgrading for resilience and stability, land regularization and formalization, and then eventually adoption of the informal neighborhood into the land cadastre. You give people a pathway that says, if you do this and this and this and this to improve your informal home, at the end of 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, we will give you a formal title to your plot of land. That horizon of time is long enough to demonstrate behavior and continuous investment, but close enough so that people will do it. Part of that is going to involve the necessity for eminent domain or expropriation, because the property could be informal because there's a question as to who owns the land, or whether the land is zoned for agricultural rather than for housing. And until that legal aspect is corrected, until the cadastre is brought into alignment with the reality, you will never get a mortgage loan. And the only way this can be done, and this has been true for 400 years, is the government comes in and says, we guarantee this title. And claims prior to this guarantee of the title, the grant of this title, are claims against the government, not against the current property owner. That's called eminent domain. Now, it is a It is a use of government police power to make change in the urban environment. And in many places in the world, including my home country, the United States, it has been used badly. But you need it, and you need it to work well. And that's a big challenge. So that's the next recommendation. As part of that, fourth recommendation, you need to digitize property registrations, national identity systems, and a means by which people can demonstrate electronically that they own something or are someone in reality. The global leader in this is India, which has done tremendous work on both the people side and on the land cadastre side. It's a big, major lift, but it's necessary. Fifth recommendation. On the demand side, if the government is going to provide subsidies directly or indirectly, they should target them to the most deserving populations. That means a conscious policy choice. It is a political choice. It's not for us to tell you who is most deserving, but whoever is deserving should get it, and those who don't need it should not be able to interpose themselves and capture it. This means you will probably have to reform your social housing credit structures. And if there is a program that provides an implicit interest subsidy, where someone is taking out a loan at a rate that is unusually cheap, you must make sure that that concessionary aspect goes to a person who deserves it and needs it. And it is not clear that that's taking place in Bolivia today. And then finally, sixth recommendation, private sector people and public sector people are in many ways different kinds of people. I've worked with both categories of people for 47 years. A large part of what we do here at the Affordable Housing Institute is to translate what private sector people say into what public sector people care about, and translate what public sector people say into things that private sector people care about. There are natural complementary roles. The public sector sets the policy, provides the resources, establishes the rules, invites the private sector to come play, rewards the good ones, and punishes the bad ones. That's called accountability. The private sector offers input into the rules, offers expert advice, helps the government do a better job, because the private sector knows more about housing than the public sector does. So it does it for public benefit. The private sector says, thank you very much for the resources. I will take risks. I will build the housing you want. When I have built it and you can see it is what you want and is occupied by the household that you want, I will earn a profit. And you will like me, and we will do this again. So that between the public sector and the private sector is a continuous dance of symbiotic relations. The conference that you are holding today is exemplary because you have people from the public sector, people from the private sector, people from academia, people at all levels of government coming in and saying, I want to contribute what I know, I want to learn what you know, and I want I and you to turn into we to make change for Bolivia. We are very pleased to have done this work. We are very pleased that this conference is going on. And in a moment, you'll stop seeing the recorded version of me and see the actual version of me, hoping to hear questions that are translated from Spanish into English. Thank you. Have a great conference.
Gracias, David, por compartir con nosotros el desarrollo de tan importante trabajo.